Hey folks, I want to welcome you back. Today we're going to look at a process that's very similar to mitosis, but it's called meiosis. And in this process known as meiosis, we're going to be making gametes, that is sex cells. So we're looking at how sperm and egg are produced inside of the body. If you remember, mitosis is the process in which regular body cells are made, all right? But meiosis involves sex cells. So we're primarily looking at how sperm and egg are created. How do we get genetically different sperm and egg each time? And then we're going to compare and contrast them to the end products of mitosis so that you can understand the difference between mitosis and meiosis. Our goals today and objectives: you should be able to explain how the chromosome number stays the same through sexual reproduction. We want to make sure that we have the same number of chromosomes when we make a zygote. We'll make sure to understand how the chromosome number stays the same through sexual reproduction. Sperm and egg have a different number of chromosomes than body cells because when they unite, they make 46 chromosomes. Alright, so there's a little bit of difference between the process of mitosis and meiosis in terms of the chromosome number present. You're going to evaluate the stages of meiosis, and to be able to differentiate between mitosis and meiosis, to know those steps of that cell cycle, is very important for the success in this video lecture. Something that we need to understand is chromosome number. So I want you to think about humans and the number of chromosomes that they have. You think that most organisms that reproduce sexually end up having a pair of chromosomes. One comes from mom, and one comes from dad. So the number of pairs is different for each animal, but one chromosome out of that pair tends to come from mom, and the other chromosome out of that pair comes from dad. In humans, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, so we have 46 chromosomes in total. 23 pairs, 46 chromosomes total. 22 of those are called autosomes, and those control just about everything in your body. And then one pair are sex chromosomes, and that helps determine gender. We know that those sex chromosomes are identified as X or Y. If you are XX, you are a girl, and if you are XY, you are a boy. Again, we got 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. One of each of those pairs comes from mom, so we get 23 chromosomes from mom, and 23 chromosomes from dad. Each body cell has a pair of chromosomes. That's known as diploid, di meaning two, and ploid refers to the number of chromosomes. So diploid means a pair of chromosomes. So every cell in your body is diploid. It has 46 chromosomes. Sex cells, however, means sperm or egg, only have one of each chromosome. These are known as haploid cells. Alright, so sex cells only have 23 chromosomes. You think about it, that's the process involved in the process of reproduction. So when we get to the point of fertilization, this results in one sperm and one egg uniting to form a zygote. Remember that each sperm and egg have 23 chromosomes, so that combines to get a total of 46. So when we think about the process of meiosis, we have to create a cell that only has 23 chromosomes. So the process is going to be a little bit different than that of mitosis, where we get 46. So at the end of meiosis, we have a sperm and egg. Each of those unite to form a zygote. That zygote then has 46 chromosomes, which is the correct number of chromosomes in the body. So just some things to keep in mind is that we have a pair of each chromosome. Humans have 23 pairs or 46 total. 22 pairs are autosomes. One pair is sex chromosomes that determine gender. Each body cell has 46 chromosomes, while your sex cells only have 23. When sex cells unite, sperm and egg, we get a zygote, which has 46. Different organisms have different chromosome numbers. You can take a look at the chart on the right and see that goldfish have 94 chromosomes. Potatoes have 48, humans are 46, pea plants are 14, and fruit flies are 8. You notice that the diploid number is always an even number, and that's because the diploid number is always involving a pair of chromosomes, right? So you'll always have an even number with that because they're in pairs. Now, each pair in an organism are considered homologous chromosomes. So each pair that you get, one from mom and one from dad, each chromosome that you get from them is homologous. All right, so we have 23 pairs of chromosomes in our body, one from mom and one from dad. Each of those pairs is considered homologous because they're relatively similar to each other. They're not exactly identical, but the one you get from mom and the one you get from dad are fairly close to each other. There's only subtle differences between them. And the process of meiosis is a little bit different than mitosis. In meiosis, we're forming sex cells. So instead of making body cells, we're making sex cells, things like sperm and egg. Rather than just having 2 cells being made in the process of mitosis, 4 cells are being made in meiosis. Rather than them being genetically similar, like in mitosis, they are genetically different in meiosis. And as a result of meiosis, because there are 2 divisions that take place to get 4 cells, we end up with half as many chromosomes as we do if we were to perform mitosis. So in a human body cell, at the end of mitosis, each cell has 46 chromosomes. But at the end of meiosis, each cell has 23. Meiosis is essentially mitosis twice. They're going to undergo the same set of steps, including prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. It's just that this process happens twice. One key difference is that during the first part, homologous pairs line up in the center of the cell during metaphase rather than single chromosomes. So instead of seeing a single line of chromosomes going down the middle of the cell, homologous pairs are going to line up. Remember that there are 23 pairs of chromosomes in the human body, so you're going to see 23 homologous pairs form at the center of that cell. They line up randomly, resulting in genetic variation. So as you see in the picture on the right, the blue represents dad and the pink represents mom. So the chromosome that you got from dad, one of them is on the left and one of them is on the right in the top, but both of them are on the right on the bottom. As they pull apart, this is going to result in genetic variation of cells, because when you form these new cells, you're going to have half of dad on the left and half mom on the left. Whereas in the bottom cell, you're going to have all of mom on the left. This creates genetic variation in the sperm or egg, which results in genetic variation in the offspring. That's why offspring don't look the same, is because of this process called independent assortment, where the chromosomes line up randomly, and that results in genetic variation. But remember, they line up in pairs, not single sets of chromosomes. They line up in homologous pairs of chromosomes along the metaphase plate. This pairing of chromosomes results in a process called crossing over, a process in which segments of chromosomes are exchanged between the pair. So if you look here, you've got those homologous pairs that are lined up in the center during metaphase. You notice that there's an overlap. There's a slight overlap of the 2 chromosomes, paternal and maternal, one from mom and one from dad. That genetic information can be exchanged, all right, which results in part of the maternal chromosome being on part of the paternal, or the one from dad, and part of the chromosome from dad on part of the chromosome from mom as well. They switch off. And this results in even greater genetic variation. At the end of the first part of meiosis, the chromosome pairs are pulled apart and the cell divides into 2. Like I said, very similar to mitosis, in that we will have anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis after these chromosomes line up in metaphase. The remainder of meiosis is similar to mitosis. Chromosomes are pulled apart again, but with this forms 4 cells with half the number of chromosomes. So the whole process starts over again in meiosis 2. The only difference in meiosis 2 is that you no longer have homologous pairs. You have one set of each chromosome inside of the cell. Then those chromosomes line up in the center again to perform meiosis 2. They pull apart, and we now have 4 cells, but they have half the number of chromosomes that the original cell had. So just taking a quick look at the difference between meiosis and mitosis, and this is really important, not just to know the steps, but to know what is the difference between the 2. In mitosis, we only have 1 division, whereas in meiosis, we have 2 divisions. In mitosis, each chromosome lines up at metaphase. In meiosis, we have homologous pairs of chromosomes lining up in metaphase. 2 cells are formed at the end of mitosis, where we have 4 cells at the end of meiosis. Genetically identical cells at the end of mitosis, and genetically different cells at the end of meiosis. In mitosis, we produce body cells, and in meiosis, we're producing sperm and egg, or reproductive cells. So there are several key differences between mitosis and meiosis that you need to make sure that you know in order to be successful in this part of the unit. One thing to keep in mind is that meiosis only occurs in sexual reproduction because this produces genetic variation. That's important to a population that reproduces sexually, is to produce that genetic variation, because genetic variation actually helps the survival of the species. Asexual reproduction, all chromosomes are inherited from a single parent. Bacteria reproduce asexually, so they get all of their genes from the single parent. There isn't any genetic variation that occurs within the reproduction of a bacterial cell. So it's important to know the difference between sexual and asexual, in that sexual produces genetic variation. Asexual produces no genetic variation. So there are several key differences here in the process of sexual and asexual reproduction. So hopefully you understand a little bit about how chromosome number stays the same through sexual reproduction, and you'll also be able to evaluate the stages of meiosis. You should also be able to differentiate between mitosis and meiosis, and understand a little bit about how both of those processes work and the differences between them. So hopefully you understand a little bit more about each of these particular cycles, and hopefully you'll be able to do well on the quiz here coming up shortly. Have a great day, guys. We'll talk to you later.